Before midnight screenings became blockbuster events, midnight movies were something else entirely. And if you ever sat through one of those screenings, you know exactly what I mean. So, let's take a look back and remember 7 films that made midnight special. And of course, this list wouldn't be complete without your picks in the comments. In 1981, a young filmmaker named Sam Raimi and his friend Bruce Campbell premiered The Evil Dead in Detroit, a movie that would change horror forever. Shot on a shoestring budget in a freezing Tennessee cabin, it told the story of 5 college friends who discover the Necronomicon, the Book of the Dead, and accidentally unleash an ancient evil that possesses everything, including the woods around them. At the time, no one had seen anything like it. The gore was extreme, the camera work wild, and the energy completely unhinged. Raimi's creativity turned budget limitations into style, using homemade effects, stop motion, and dizzying camera moves to create something raw, frightening, and strangely funny. The Evil Dead was banned, censored, and given the dreaded X rating. But that only added to its legend. Stephen King called it ferociously original, and word spread fast among horror fans. It didn't just launch a franchise, it launched a new kind of horror. Wild, handmade, and absolutely fearless. When The Warriors first hit theaters in 1979, audiences and critics didn't know what to make of it. Walter Hill's stylized vision of New York gangs felt too strange to be real and too raw to be fantasy. But that mix, part comic book, part street nightmare, is exactly what made it unforgettable. The story follows a Coney Island gang called the Warriors, who travel into the city for a massive summit meant to unite all the boroughs under one leader. But when that leader, Cyrus, is assassinated, and the blame falls on them, the group must fight their way back home through a city that's turned into a neon war zone. Shot with energy and precision, the Warriors played like a dark fable about survival and loyalty. Yet its release was marred by real violence. Fights broke out at screenings, 3 people were killed, and Paramount was forced to pull all advertising. For a while, many theaters refused to show it at all. But what nearly killed the Warriors in its first run later made it a legend. When it moved to late-night screenings, its reputation exploded. The film's exaggerated gangs, pounding score, and gritty, dreamlike vision of New York turned it into one of the most beloved cult movies of its era. No other film defines the midnight movie like the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Jim Sharman's outrageous mix of sci-fi, horror, and rock musical didn't just entertain, it changed what going to the movies could mean. Adapted from Richard O'Brien's stage play, Rocky Horror follows Brad and Janet, a straight-laced couple who stumble into the mansion of Dr. Frank N. Furter, the flamboyant, self-proclaimed sweet transvestite who's building the perfect man. What happens next is pure chaos. Dancing, music, glitter, and sexual liberation wrapped in a parody of 1950s sci-fi. When the film first premiered, it didn't make much noise. But word of mouth and midnight screenings changed everything. Audiences began performing the film live, shouting lines at the screen, and turning every show into a ritual. Soon, Rocky Horror became the longest-running theatrical release in history, and the one movie that never left midnight. George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead was shot on a tiny budget outside Pittsburgh. It became one of the first true zombie films, and the movie that gave birth to the idea of midnight cinema. The story begins simply. A brother and sister visit their father's grave when the dead suddenly start to walk. Barbara escapes to a farmhouse where she meets Ben, played by Dwayne Jones, and together they try to survive the night as the world collapses outside. When it premiered, audiences were shocked. The gore was extreme for its time, and without an MPAA rating system yet in place, kids were walking into matinee screenings unprepared for what they were about to see. The outrage got it pulled from daytime theaters and pushed it into the midnight slot, where it found the audience it was meant for. By the 1970s, Night of the Living Dead had become a ritual for horror fans. It inspired a generation of filmmakers, launched the modern zombie, and proved that independent horror could say something real. Hard to believe Eraserhead was David Lynch's first feature. He wrote it, directed it, edited it, and even worked on the sound himself, and the result was something no one had ever seen before. The story, if you can call it that, centers on Henry Spencer, a man trapped in an industrial nightmare after becoming a father to a deformed child. It's about fear, isolation, and the terror of responsibility, themes that would define Lynch's work for decades. When Eraserhead premiered in 1977, critics hated it. Many called it disgusting or unwatchable. But word spread fast among the midnight crowd, and in the following years, it played continuously. 3 years in Los Angeles, a year in San Francisco, nearly 2 in New York. Directed by Alan Parker, Pink Floyd The Wall is the film adaptation of the band's 1979 double album. Originally conceived as a concert movie, Parker convinced the band to turn it into a narrative, part live action, part animation, and almost entirely told through music. The story follows a rock star named Pink as he spirals into isolation and madness, building an imaginary wall to shut himself off from the world. Through flashbacks, we see his childhood, his failed marriage, and his mental collapse as he drifts into delusions of fascism and control. The character was loosely inspired by former Pink Floyd member Syd Barrett, whose struggles with fame and mental illness haunted the band for years. The animation, created by political cartoonist Gerald Scarfe, became as iconic as the music itself, grotesque, beautiful, and deeply symbolic. Roger Waters wrote the screenplay and the lyrics, turning The Wall into a surreal portrait of fame, trauma, and self-destruction. The film premiered in just one U.S. theater in 1982, earning over $60,000 its opening weekend. It later expanded, grossing over $20 million, and soon found a second life in late-night screenings through the 1980s and 90s, especially among new fans discovering the band for the first time. The Wall remains one of the greatest rock films ever made, ambitious, disturbing, and visually hypnotic. Decades later, its themes of war, isolation, and emotional decay still feel uncomfortably familiar. Alejandro Jodorowsky's El Topo turned the idea of a midnight screening into a cultural event, a surreal, violent, and spiritual acid western that redefined what cinema could be. Shot in Mexico and filled with religious imagery, violence, and symbolism, it turned Jodorowsky into an underground legend and one of the most influential independent filmmakers of all time. The story follows a gunman named El Topo, played by Jodorowsky himself, traveling through the desert with his young son. After discovering a massacred village, he vows revenge, then sets out to become the greatest gunfighter in the West. Betrayal divides the film in two. In the second half, El Topo is reborn among a community of outcasts living underground, promising to lead them toward the light. Nothing about El Topo was typical. Its nudity, religious symbolism, and scenes with real animals caused outrage, and Christian groups protested its screenings. But Jodorowsky insisted everything had meaning. The nudity, he said, represented innocence and purity, untouched by sin. When Beatles manager Alan Klein brought the film to the US, distributor Ben Barenholtz saw it and began showing it at midnight at New York's Elgin Theater in 1971. It played 7 nights a week and drew crowds of artists, musicians, and night owls. For years, that was the only way to see it. It never even got a VHS release. El Topo changed how theaters thought about independent cinema and proved that strange, transgressive films could find their audience after dark. More than 50 years later, it's still one of the most daring and original films ever made.